welcome to this mini masterclass with Mwandwe Chileshe. Mwandwe is Director of Food Security and Agriculture at Global Citizen. And since 2018, Mwandwe has led campaigns that have delivered major new financial and policy commitments on agriculture and ending hunger. And she's organised events all over the world and coordinated partner involvement in some of Global Citizen's big festivals. Previously, Mwandwe led the Zambian Scaling Up Nutrition Alliance and played a really key role in the creation of Zambia's first Parliamentary Caucus on food and nutrition. So great to have you with us, Mwandwe. Thanks for joining us. And who better to ask? How can we leverage powerful narratives to influence change both locally and globally?
Thanks a lot for having me. I think I have my three main top tips. The first one is anchor your story in authenticity and personal connection. The second is recognize the power of political will and mobilize collective action. And the third is empower less heard voices and ensure inclusivity in your narrative.
Fantastic. And so your first point was anchor your story in authenticity and personal connection. So how can we do that?
What I can give as a practical tool on this one is that, first of all, you need to be able to recognize what is your personal story, and then being able to develop a narrative arc that moves from that personal story that you've identified to the broader issue. And this is not just on a personal level, this is also on an organizational level. So as an organization, what is the story that you are deciding to tell, and how do you build the broader narrative from that? A very quick story about my own background is that I was really driven to be able to work on food security and around global health because of my own personal experiences with sort of inefficiencies in the healthcare system when I was living in Zambia. And I realized very quickly that it's these inefficiencies that could mean sort of the chance to continue living or not, and the kind of privilege that comes with access to healthcare. And so working from that point, I always knew I was going to work in a space that needed to be able to build to a broader issue. The more authentic a story is, the more likely you are to be successful at convincing others to care about a broader issue.
That makes complete sense, yeah. And your second point was recognize the power of political will and mobilize collective action. So what did you mean exactly by that?
Exactly. I think the big lesson is, first, you need to be able to identify who are the key decision makers and the influential politicians who can effect change. And then being able to leverage on movements and grassroots and using media and campaigns to then put pressure on those leaders to be able to effect change. I think it needs to be emphasized quite a lot around how political will is not just a thing that is desirable in the spaces that we work in, but it's actually really essential for driving real solutions. And those solutions happen when we're able to actually use the collective action and movements and voices of lots of other people to be able to put that pressure on them. A really great example of this is the work that I currently do with Global Citizen, where I've been lucky enough to spearhead campaigns where we've gotten in rooms with really influential people, whether it's heads of states or ministers who have the key say on a big budget. For instance, I've worked a lot around food security, and to be able to get this sort of change, whether it's at a global scale or in country, you really need to be able to have that leadership at a sort of top level. And to get that leadership, a lot of the time is that politicians listen to their electorate. So it's being able to mobilize grassroots and movements to put that pressure on them. You mentioned a little bit earlier about my experience of setting up Zambia's first Parliamentary Caucus on food security and nutrition. The group of people I was working with at the time, we recognized that to be able to sort of create momentum on this, we needed people talking about it. And the minute that we got members of parliament to talk about it, it was being discussed in parliament. And next, the sitting government was being able to do more concrete efforts on this. So I think that here too, the lesson is very clear around use your movement and your campaign to be able to put pressure on political leaders.
Fantastic. That makes complete sense. And your final point, really important, was to empower less heard voices and ensure inclusivity in your narrative. So tell us a bit more about why that's important and what you need to do.
And to be able to drive an authentic story, to be able to drive change, you need to be able to empower less heard voices. So thinking about how do you actively seek out stories and perspectives from those who are directly affected by the issues that you advocate on is very important. But also, I think a lot of the time when we think about leadership or the spaces that we're in, whether it be food security or education, different areas that we work on, sometimes we think that leadership is just about ideation, but it's quite important to also be thinking about leadership as a way to actualize the vision of voices who normally don't get that platform. And this is why this third tool is one of the ones which is the most practical and really important in any of the kind of work and advocacy that I've done so far.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for your great, insightful answers, Mwandwe. Really appreciate it. As you know, we're asking everyone who films a mini masterclass with us to recommend some reading or watching or listening. So tell us your recommendations.
I came with 3 because I've always been an overachiever. So for the ones that like to learn by listening, I cannot over recommend the Climate Pod. So this is a podcast which has got some really great conversations around climate and the impacts, but also the tangible solutions. But I've also had the opportunity to do an episode with the podcast. So if people want to learn a little bit more about my journey. The second one, for people who are more visual learners, is a documentary that had a profound influence on me during my formative years, and it's called Fire in the Blood. And it sheds the light on campaigners who worked really hard for access on HIV and AIDS drugs on the African continent. And it really brings together the ideas I was talking about, how tenacity, resilience can really be able to drive sort of influences and politicians to be able to create change. And then the third piece, which is a reading one, I had quite a few book options, but I decided to go with a work of fiction. It's called Patchwork by Ellen Banda Aku, and it beautifully weaves this story of a young girl growing up in Zambia, and it touches on themes of family, love, loss, and identity. And I think it's a really great to be able to also rely on narratives that are about drawing out emotion, really speaking to this idea of how do you blend factual insights, emotional narratives, and thought-provoking perspectives to be able to drive the kind of work that we do. So those are my 3 recommendations: visual, listening, and reading.
Fantastic. Thanks, Mwandwe. I'm looking forward to listening, watching, and reading all of those. Thank you so much for your time. That's really great mini masterclass. And thank you everyone for watching. If you enjoyed this mini masterclass, please do share it. And if you have any questions, just send them in. Thanks very much.